which we're going into. And today I'm going to tell you right now, John is one of the most complicated, complex writings in the New Testament. I'm going to stay in the level of Midrash. I gave you that fourfold, and we might even recap it in a moment here. There are higher levels of hidden messages in the book of John. I'm doing my best to keep it down to the level of Midrash. But it is a very deep work. So deep, in fact, that I think most people miss it, unfortunately. So we learned last week, a little bit of a recap, we make the claim that the New Testament has been misgenred, right? We're looking at this from the wrong perspective with the wrong assumptions. We're not aware how rabbinic this work actually is. And when you realize it's a different genre than you thought, you have to go back and reread. You have to look for clues and hints. You have to look for those pieces and kind of reevaluate, have I understood this, right? Today, we're going to do the same thing in a fraction of what's there. It's a 12-verse passage. 12 verses, that's it. And I'm telling you, there's so much packed into it. We're going to look at the wedding at Cana, the miracle of turning water to wine, and what else is going on in that text. And this one's not a theory of my own at this point. This one has a lot behind it. People have said, look at this element and look at this element. So last week was one I sort of stumbled on. This one is one that's a little more grounded, but I still think it's going to be new for some people. And of course, we have people online as well. So we'll get started here. This is John 2, 1 through 12. And just so you know, if you're interested in this, we have the 4-part series Midrash in the New Testament on the Tikva YouTube page. We have the healing of the woman and the girl, where we did this to another parable. And now we have the woman at the well. And then after this week, we'll have this one as well. So there are more of these. And over time, when I start to unpack these, you'll start to remember them. Oh, wine means this. Water means this. A well means this, right? And over time, you'll develop the library of images. And then you can look at the text and start to see, okay, something else is going on here. So, the wedding at Cana. What are some of the traditional interpretations of the wedding at Cana? And we'll read it just so we're all refreshed. What are some of the traditional interpretations, though, that you've heard? Right or wrong? Save the best to last? Okay. Like the wine, yep, okay. It might even be where that statement comes from.
The way that Yeshua spoke with his mother, some might interpret that as he was being disrespectful. But it's in light of what actually was going on.
Yeah, it's a really weird passage. In some translations, it's what do you have to do with me? It's a strange statement.
How about our Lord can be importuned, just like Abraham asked Elohim, can you save this town if they're 40, 30, 20 righteous? And, according to the text, Yeshua was not planning a miracle, but he responded to that request.
So that there's a malleable nature to spiritual blessing.
Well, then, if you ask and you pray and you ask, then
yeah. Okay.
there can be a response.
Even though he told to his mother that it's not his time, she told to the worker do exactly what he said, and he still make the miracle. So he still respects her wish, even though he told her that it's not his time.
He said no, and she did it anyway, which just proves he was Jewish.
That's right. He was a good Jewish boy, right? That's one.
In just that moment between him and her, I felt like, because of what he said, it's not my time, he was identifying himself with her. Their relationship was going to change. In that moment, he was identifying her role and his role.
Okay.
Going forward.
Good. Right. So from this 12-verse passage, we've already in this room, we see different things, right? We're going to look at how that stacks up at the end, so keep those in mind. Collectively, some of these over the years I've heard, one of them is the transformation of water represents the transformation of humanity through grace. Right? There's this idea of that, and that's kind of an Augustinian idea that's been adapted over the years. Thomas Aquinas has this idea that it's kind of it nets out as the water is the Old Covenant, the Old Testament, and the New Testament is the wine. Now, of course, that's great, except for it completely is anachronistic. That's centuries before that was even a dynamic. So we can see, obviously, those are two different, very popular ideas. There's the conversation, is recreational drinking permitted or is it not permitted? And this is often the passage people come to. Well, Jesus created wine, so must be, right? I think there's something else going on. Spoiler alert. We'll go ahead and read this. As always, when you're reading rabbinic literature, pay attention to the metaphors and the imagery. The authors do not waste ink. They don't just mention things randomly. There's a reason. Numbers. Numbers are important. Mentions of day, date, time. Those are important. The well story, right? It was the 6th hour. You see these ideas of time. It's not random. It's not, oh, this random thing happened at, this 20, right? There's something going on. The location matters too. We'll look at why. And then anything the people in that parable or story say has some meaning as well. And some of it we won't be able to get to. I will not be able to get to the interaction between Yeshua and his mother. I think there are some dimensions there which we don't have time for today. But we see this as our little cue that we need to pay attention. All of these things that we're seeing. They will make sense as we go along if we know the legend on the map, right? So let me read this here. 12 passages. Should be pretty easy. Pay attention to what's repeated. Pay attention to these details. I'm just going to read history through. On the 3rd day there was a wedding in Cana, which is in the Galilee, and Yeshua's mother was there. Yeshua and his disciples were among those invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, the mother of Yeshua said to him, "They have no wine." Yeshua said to her, "What do I have to do with you, woman? My time has still not come." His mother said to the servers, "Do whatever he says to you." 6 stone pitchers were prepared according to the ordinance of the Jews, the Yehudim, for their purification. Each of them was able to hold 2 or 3 batim, so it's just a measurement here. Yeshua said to them, "Fill the pitchers with water," and they filled them to the top. He said, "Now draw some and take it to the master of the banquet." And they took it. The leader of the banquet tasted the water, which had turned into wine, not knowing where it was from. But his servers who had drawn the water knew. The leader of the banquet called to the groom and said to him, "Everyone gives the good wine first, and after they have drunk to overflowing, he gives them the bad. But you have hidden the good wine until now." This was the first of the signs that Yeshua did in Cana, which is in the land of the Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Okay. What did we hear in that? What stuck out to you? What do you think? Just thinking of which one, because probably a lot stuck out. Arlene, in the meantime, yeah.
I'm going out on a big limb because I'm not familiar with the New Testament, as most of you realize. But what struck me was that his mother said, "Go do it." And he responded, "It's not my time," meaning not my time to show who I am and the miracles.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me that his mother said, "Do it," and he said, "It's not my time," but he listened to his mother, he did, and it happened.
Yeah, it's a really weird. What do you mean it's not your time? If you can turn it into wine, do it.
He wasn't ready to show that he was the Messiah.
Right. Right. There's something to do with time, and being ready or not the time. The time or not the time. Okay.
I was always intrigued by this master of the feast, because it's not the bridegroom, and it's not seem to be the father of the bride or the father of the groom. It was like the overseer of the whole estate or something. I always was intrigued by master of the feast.
Yeah, keep that in mind because it's not the bridegroom and it's not him. So who is that master of the feast? Yeah.
A lot of people, like we quoted and said that it was saved it until last, but that's not what the text says. It doesn't say last. He says now, which is different than what we quote, you know?
Yeah, that comes from the net. What's the net end of that story? Is it the best? Right, because that's what happens when you're not aware of those elements. There's other stuff that are missed. I see a hand over here. Okay, go ahead.
The exactly point in my view is the Brit Hadasha don't express what is the goal behind the miracle of Yeshua. Don't explain anything for transform the water for wine. Only say like a peshat and don't explain anything.
Okay, right. So there's this sort of hinted nature of the way it's written.
Yeah.
An audience that knows how to pull those elements out will do it, but write it in a peshat form so that like even anybody can read it and understand something. Okay, well good. Let me show you some things that I think jump out. Again, we can't go into everything. And I want you to keep in the back of your mind the theory we laid out last week. Again, not my theory. This has been out there in the scholarly world, that the book of John is written in a sequence of the Parsha cycle, a 3-year Parsha cycle. So if that's the case, we can already see elements that line up with parts of Genesis, right? The wine and the vineyard. I don't know exactly where it would line up, but keep that in mind because that might be what's driving this. Noah, could be Noah, right? By that point, right, we're in John 2, and there are definitely some elements that could put it to Parsha Noah. Okay, the very first thing, Cana. Okay, so Cana. It says it twice. Cana in the Galil. Cana is, on one level, it means measure or reed, like a measuring reed, or the way that things can be measured from a liquid standard. It also has the word create inside of its, Hebrew words have multiple meanings, right? Create, okay, so he created wine from water. We see that theme. Again, we're still in the book of Genesis. That would make sense. That would be apropos. It also has this idea of redemption, acquiring. And we'll look at that. But acquiring and redeeming, I like that one. That's in the wheelhouse. Whatever it is, Cain is an important name because it's said twice. And often in the Bible, or even in the New Testament writings, there is this idea of if something is mentioned twice, pay attention to it. I didn't say the Galil, but the word for Galil, the Galilee, comes from the word gal, like a wave, like a revelation. So the word for Galilee already has the idea of revelation of God baked into it.
So saying they were bookends. That was one thing I was going to say. I noticed it starts out with that after in the 3 days, and then that, and then it ends with the Cana.
Yeah, so it's a very it's encapsulated in this idea of Cana, and the Galilee.
I was going to say, when you said what stuck out, for me it was the last verse of John 2 that you read. It was about this was his first miracle.
Yep.
And he was baptized in John 1. So this would be proof that he wasn't doing any miracles until he received the Holy Spirit, which was given at his baptism.
Which the giving of that spirit of Messiah is itself a rabbinic concept. And the book of John tracks right along in bounds of that rabbinic concept. Yeah, very good point. Okay, so we have the idea of create. Okay, it makes sense. If we're tracking along with Genesis, that makes sense, right? We're in that same ballpark. In Nehemiah 5:8, we see the same word for redeeming the Jewish people from the nations. Keep this in mind. This will start to build over time. Is that what Cana means? Some kind of Are we talking about a redemption story? A veiled redemption story? I think we might be. In Cain, in the birth of Cain, we see, I have acquired a person with the help of the Lord. So there's almost this miraculous redemption kind of idea building just from the first few words of this so far. Okay. The third day. So the third day is not just a random day chosen. The third day in the rabbinic world is a code. Something miraculous or something amazing is going to happen on the third day. On this week's Parsha, we see the third day. On the third day, Abraham looked up and he saw the place. Right? It's part of Esther's redemption. In fact, there's a Talmudic passage that goes through all the appearances of the phrase the third day. And it tells you, number one, it's the day that God said Ki Tov twice in the creation of the first week. On the third day, God said Ki Tov twice. So it's a special day. It's also the day, because of that and other reasons, it's a day connected with Jewish weddings. In the case of someone's first wedding, right? Like the first wedding would be on this day, the third day. The third day is itself a symbol of redemption. It's code. Now, if we're reading it just from, is it a Monday or a Thursday, we miss all of that. But if you look back in the texts and in the rabbinic literature, they call out this idea of a third day. It's code. It's connected to the giving of the Torah. This is another thing I want you to pay attention to. The rabbis say the giving of the Torah was through the merit of the third day. As it is stated, it was on the third day when it was morning. So the third day is also connected with the revelation of God and the revelation of Torah. So far, in the first 2 sentences, we're seeing the theme of redemption, revelation, and it's connected with this special day, which is seen as the revelation of God, the giving of the Torah. Right? We're already off in completely different territory. The themes are building. Redemption, revelation, and then the Torah. Water. We know about water. Some of this I kept from last week, but I did try to mix some other things up. Water is connected to Torah knowledge. It's life, right? As it says in the Talmud, matters of Torah are likened to 3 liquids, water, milk, and wine. Now we see milk referenced in later New Testament writings as well. Right, you're not ready for this, you're back to milk, right? So it's not a negative, but wine is ultimately the highest level of Torah in this, because you want to say, okay, which one's better? Well, you need water for life. Which one is connected with joy? Wine. Wine's connected with joy. So wine becomes, in this map, the highest level of Torah knowledge. And then again, just to keep in the theme of water, as the world cannot exist without water, so too the world cannot exist without Torah. So we have water. It's in our story here. We're going to see that and what that nets out as for us. Wine. Wine is joy and happiness. We know that from Passover, right? We take a little bit of the wine out when we're doing the plagues. We do 1 drop because we want to decrease the joy, because people had to die in that situation. But wine is also connected to the messianic prophecies, right? The blood of grapes. We see this with the prophecies of Judah. So all of this goes back to the Torah. The rabbis aren't making this stuff up. John's not making it up. These have their origin in the Torah. And it gets very deep very quickly. Do you feel that? We're trying now to keep track of all of these other meanings. Well, they were very versed in this at this time. Again, compared to water, wine is the highest level of Torah knowledge. So I said before, there's Peshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. I'm staying in the level of Drash today, in Remez. We generally read the Bible in the plain literal meaning. That's the lowest level. It's not a bad thing, but there's more to it. Wine is the secrets of the Torah, right? The high-level knowledge that we don't have access to yet. Everyone who already knows all this other stuff, they want the high level. We want the secrets of the Torah. And that's what Yeshua is seen teaching. That's what he's actually teaching in many cases. And in many cases, it runs people right out of his vicinity, right? We think of the body and the blood. That sends people scurrying away because they're not ready for that yet. Not everybody was. And in this time, this was probably the last window before they started putting blocks on people learning this type of material. It's just, the average person isn't there yet. All right, so wine has the same numerical value when you look at the word yain and sod. Sod is secrets and yain is wine. It has the same numerical value as secrets. So there's this idea. So again, they didn't come up with this idea on their own. Wine in the prophets, the abundance of wine, the mountains are flowing. It's revelation and knowledge of God. That's what wine represents. We see this in another midrash. Better than wine in Song of Songs Just as wine, the longer it ages in the jug, it improves, so too matters of Torah. So this starts to make sense of wine. When we see references to wine, he turns water from wine. He turns water to wine. He's taking the simple level of Torah, and he's teaching on top of it. Right? I gave you a little bit of that story ahead of time. Does it make sense, though? Even wine has a different meaning to it. And this will start to make sense of the wine and the wineskins. This isn't seen as some brand new idea of teaching. It's seen as very ancient. Somebody has access to the ancient, unadulterated, aged teachings of the Torah. It would be a problem if somebody came out and taught something completely different and completely left the tradition and the Torah in the dust. That's not what they're saying here. And that's not the moral of the wine and the wineskins. He's using the same idea, that the wine is actually very ancient. This is the original Torah, which we didn't get the first tablets, if you remember. Moses smashed them. The tradition says whatever was on those tablets is out of our reach. But when Messiah returns, we'll see what was on that. So this idea of the wine being mystical or high-level teachings of Torah connects with that tradition as well. So it gets very deep. Right? You can feel it. You can feel the tension because it's not the way we're taught to read this material. The stone jars, there are 6 in this story. 6 is important. We'll look at that. But stone is not subject to impurity. So if you want to have vessels in your house that you don't have to towel or continually have to wash and make them pure again, stone and glass. And so they used a lot of stone at this time for that reason. And this would be water you take out and you wash for bread or you wash your hands. Those were customs in the first century. On and off, those were customs for the people, not just the priests. They had that almost forever. But the people would be engaged in that as well. And we see that in the Gospels.
So are you suggesting those amphoras that were used in the story of Cana were perhaps made out of stone? Or?
Well, that's what it says, yeah.
So it couldn't become impure, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that what it's trying to do, it's trying to tell you that this water is pure. This isn't dirty water. Right? It's trying to set up that whatever that water is also pure. It's not dirty. There is this idea, and I have heard this taught before, that it is dirty water. Right? That's not the case. I think you'll see why I think that in a second. But yeah, some people definitely key off of, what stone jars were they? What did they look like? And there's like this whole idea about that. That's interesting, but I think that the mention of those has a different meaning to it. And of course, in the Mishnah, we can see that earthenware vessels can become impure, but stone vessels do not. So the water in these are pure. It's not dirty, like, what would you call it? Like pure, water with like dirt and soil and sin and stuff. We're not doing that. This is pure water.
You find so much broken pottery because it was a one-use pottery many times because it couldn't be reused because of impurity.
Right, so he said that when something becomes impure, they smash it, usually by the Dead Sea.
Even outside of Jerusalem, like in the caves of the Maccabees, there's lots of broken pottery there.
Yeah, so these vessels are important. Purity, spiritual purity is a thing we don't really think about on a day-to-day basis. You have to kind of learn about it, and then you'll start to see it all throughout the New Testament. What does 6 reference? What do you think 6? Why 6? Why not 4? Why not 20? What do you think?
6 ages, 6 days of creation.
Okay. I like that one. Not that they do have these meanings, right? Mankind, humanity, but 6 days of creation. That's where you see this number 6 appear a lot, right? The 6, and we see that at Havdalah, by the way. The 6 days of work and the 7th, right? We see every week we're reminded of 6 versus 7.
This present.
6th day, creation of man.
Right, so creation, right? That's why mankind is usually associated with 6 as well, because that's when humanity was created. But keep the idea of creation, the 6 days of creation in mind.
The Olam Hazeh, also Olam Haba.
Olam Haba is usually 8, so after, like it transcends 7.
Okay.
Olam Haba is like the 8th day, you would say. Okay. Good. So we're picking up though. the 6 days of the week. So as creation is laid out, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, Shabbat, rest, cease, right? Well, in the rabbinic idea, there's a such thing called the divine day. And we see this in the Psalms. We see 2 Peter references this, if I recall, I think it's 2 Peter. We see this idea that 6 on the day-to-day of the creation also reflects the years, the thousands of years that go up to the Messianic kingdom. That's where the idea for a 1,000-year reign of Messiah comes from, is this idea that 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Now, Yeshua's time would have been like right around here, right? So we're still a while off. It wasn't his time yet, if you will. But this idea that there's this divine day, they call it, for in your sight is 1,000 years or like yesterday that has passed. And we see the apostolic writers, they actually use that same formula in their conversation about hastening the day of the Lord. And if you're in a Torah club, again, they've just gone through this material. So this should be more familiar for you. But the creation week, which is why, by the way, we honor Shabbat on Saturday, we keep that calendar, because it's a shadow of the redemption process over the arc of time. And we're not there, we're very close in our time, but we're still not fully there yet. Now it can be hastened, but it hasn't been. So the worst case scenario is it runs out to the very end, and then the redemption comes. That's how the tradition looks at it. Does that make sense? So 6 doesn't mean just they're counting how many chairs and tablecloths they have that they need for this. There's a meaning to this. See how many of you get this one. What is the Messianic era likened to in terms of metaphors from the prophets? What do you think? Was that?
A wedding.
A wedding, perfect. A wedding. Wait, we're talking about a wedding, aren't we? A wedding and a banquet, a feast, right? And those are all part of the same celebration, by the way. A wedding in the prophets is what comes after a harmonious relationship between Israel and God. It represents the Messianic kingdom. We see this all the time. It's in the Talmud as well, the idea that there's a Messianic banquet, and some people are invited and they're allowed in, and some aren't. There are stories in the Talmud that absolutely overlay with the gospel parables. It's like, it's the same story. They're obviously using the same metaphor and ideology. So, we see this. Oh man, look. Tractate Ta'anit says the giving of the Torah is like a wedding. Right? Revelation of God's wisdom is like a wedding. And that's how Shavuot is celebrated, by the way. We celebrate it like a wedding. And Israel, who were engaged with the golden calf, it's like they cheated. In the Midrash, it's what it's talked about as. A bride that has cheated on the wedding day. Okay, so the revelation of God is connected to a wedding, right? Exodus Rabbah, the world is betrothed, I meant to say, as it is stated, I will betroth you to me forever. We say that every day. It's from the book of Hosea. However, in the days of the Messiah, it will be marriage. So when the Messiah arrives, we should expect the Messianic banquet to kick off. What is it? It's a wedding. I want to look at how many of you are familiar with Hosea? You're familiar with it, right? It's about a nation through the metaphor of a woman who was basically sent off for being idolatrous. There's a lot of mention of wine. And there's also the hope that people will be brought back, right? There's a story there that seems to be the precursor to the wedding at Cana. The nation is sent off, adulterous. But is promised that when they are redeemed, it'll be like a wedding. They'll be taken back, and there'll be a celebration. Interesting. The Messianic era inherently is about joy at the end of the day, right? A lot of things that the world suffers from will start to be dealt with. New Torah will be revealed. That's the biggest takeaway from the Messianic era. That new Torah, new knowledge, insights, knowledge of God that we never knew existed will now be ready for us. That'll now be shared for us. Of course, that's Rambam, but you can find this all throughout the Midrash. You can find it in the New Testament. You can find it in John 2, is what I'm saying. This idea that some new level of knowledge is going to be unveiled for humanity. And it's not brand new, it's not divergent, it's the original that we weren't ready for.
You know, when people speak of, I think, the teachings of Jesus in the gospel, I think sometimes they think of those teachings right there at that time that he's giving, as though that is the wine, as though that is the, and I think there are glimmers of it, you know, but like just more broadly, you know, throughout the world. You can kind of already find the golden rule in China and Greece and other places, you know, generally speaking, love your neighbor, kind of like, so I get this idea that when you're talking about this second Torah, this revelation about, you know, it's not, you know, these obvious things like do unto others as you would have to, you know, I mean, it seems like it would be something else that is on a different plane, or I don't know, it wouldn't be the auto-obvious things that were already kind of concurrent with the rabbis, you know, and one of the things, many of the things that they were saying. It must have been something, and he was teaching, but, and I think there were glimmers of this higher understanding of life and everything, but I don't think that was it, you know, it's like I could see a person reading that passage saying, my time hasn't come yet, meaning I'm not supposed to go to the cross yet, or I'm not supposed to go and do my labor, you know, and that's not it. It's eons ahead, you know, and it's on a completely different level. That's not as fine as smoke, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the way I've understood the Messianic era, which by the way these are classical metaphors. Wine, weddings, these are the height of living in the first century under Roman oppression and poverty and such. The way we live today is almost magical. It would be absolutely, we have smartphones, we have AI, we can fly to Israel from anywhere in the world, right? Travel, trains. I mean, the way we live today would be what most people would imagine, or even outside of their imagination, as the Messianic era. So whatever that looks like is still ahead of us. But to your point, some of those teachings, it wasn't that those teachings were necessarily brand new. People just weren't ready for that type of, they weren't psychologically there yet, as we saw pretty much all throughout the Gospels. They're not ready to receive these ideas.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, you might have people in, I guess, mainstream religion that look at those passages in the Gospel, might look at stories like this, and just kind of get the sense like, well, this is it. It's like, well, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if they're ready for it. You know,
right?
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's why I say we take these, like if this were rewritten today, it would have similar metaphors, but I think there'd be different conclusions, because this is sort of the classical era. Rabbinic literature of this time has the same idea. And at the time, there were no churches, there was no monotheism. It was the idea of monotheism and one God bringing a messianic kingdom was something the world wasn't ready for. Okay, so let's go through some of these, because I want to put these pieces back together through the New Testament verses and let you start to see what we're talking about. Okay, on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in the Galilee. So if we're reading that, on the third day, some kind of revelatory thing is happening the third day, related to the giving of the Torah, right? That's what the big third day anchor comes from. There's a wedding, a celebration of some kind, maybe the Messianic kingdom, at this place called Redemption in the Galilee, right? Revelation, Torah, redemption is all swirling through this sentence here. The rabbis say, I had this one earlier, but a little bit different. It was on the merit of the third day when it was morning. Okay, so we're connecting the third day here with the giving of the Torah. So some kind of knowledge and revelation is about to happen at this place called redemption, is the way we're looking at it. Isaiah 25:6, God of hosts will make on this mount for all the people a banquet of rich viands, a banquet of choice wines well refined. So this idea that wine and revelation and joy and redemption is already in the prophets. In fact, that's where these ideas come from, right? When the wine ran out, the mother said they have no wine. So they weren't there yet. They weren't at that level yet. They were lacking something. Oh, do I have? I'm sorry, 1:1. Yeah, sorry.
when it talks about, go back to Isaiah, the choice, well-refined, aged wine in some translations. And it's like when people say, oh, the new wine and the new wineskin, you know, in that parable, and they make it anti-Jewish stuff. And it's like he knew that the old wine is better. He wasn't ignorant of wine tastes.
Yeah, and so that's a good point, because that is the idea that Christianity was the new wine, and it's this completely divergent thing. But new wine has never been valued over the aged wine, right? So it falls apart more in Luke. Yeah. Luke gives you a little bit more than the others. Right. But in this framework, aged wine is the goal. Did I see a hand over? Oh.
I don't know if I'm premature. I was trying to let you get through that, but you started it. You did it.
David always starts it.
Based off the stuff you'd said before about John, so the second day is the day that God divides the waters. So we've got waters in the heavens. So we say Mayim Kayin, the water from heaven. It was also the term when Noah, so if we go to say the second story, Noah, the waters from heavens came down. But the thing with the water and the wine that we see, the aged wine in the heavens, we sing this song, if you sing this song at Passover, about the water and the wine with Leviathan. You know, it's to me, I see a Passover. I know this is a little bit premature when we look at the aging or the timing of John to the Torah, but I see this really as a Passover meal kind of concept. It starts on Kol Moed, you know, that when things were supposed to go back to normal, it's still a festival going on all week. You know, it doesn't stop. It just continues to celebrate.
So, to your point, the next passage is that he goes to Capernaum and it's Passover. So maybe there's something there.
And in Isaiah 26, it talks about being resurrected from the dead and the day of judgment. And he's like, come in and hide, kind of like almost like the angel of the Lord outside. And if you had the blood of the lamb on your doorposts, in the future, you would be passed over of that indignation. And in the end of Isaiah 26, the last 3 verses.
Yep.
Also, just generally about wine, and the making and storage of it, like daylight is like the enemy of wine. Heat and daylight both. And so, I guess another reason why it would be associated with secrets in Revelation was the fact that, you know, you had to put it in big cisterns underground. You had to put it in giant amphorae and jugs and cork it up and make sure it was in a cool, dark place. So I can see how very easily it would be associated with secrecy, just because, you know, you wouldn't store it in daylight. You wouldn't store it in the temperatures of what Israel is today.
Yep.
It'd have to be underground. It'd have to be somewhere in a shady, cool, stone walls, kind of cool place.
It's kept away from the masses. Right.
It's squirreled away.
Okay, I was kind of going in the direction too of the resurrection dead. Like, as another aspect of that, third day, Yeshua rose. You think of Jonah in the belly of the great fish. That was in the water. And then if you go further on, he's talking about that the temple will be destroyed and raised on the third. You know, there's still all that kind of language still going on with the resurrection of the dead.
Yeah. So I don't know how I would get it to you, but if you can look into like Sepharia.org and look at, just do a search for the third day, that passage in the Talmud should come up, and you'll be able to anchor an idea of how broad the third day is in terms of a metaphor, a euphemism. It's a code. I'm telling you, it's not a random note of time. It's actually code, because you see it in the resurrection. It's connected to Isaac. You know, we haven't really talked about Isaac very much, but Isaac and all the Messianic Midrash is 100% behind what the Gospels are connecting to. It's just it's very deep. Yeah. There's so much in the Gospels from that. So, all right. So there's some kind of revelation. We can expect a banquet. We're kind of seeing a shadow of the Messianic kingdom, right? Wine, joy, a wedding. Again, here's where the 6 comes into play. When the wine ran out, they have no wine. Which kind of wine are we talking about? In the future, the Holy One, blessed be He, will make a banquet for the righteous, and they will drink the wine that has been kept in its grapes since the 6 days of creation. So we're seeing 6 is connected to the revelation of Torah that has been kept secret since the 6 days of creation, right? So it predates humanity. You have kept the good wine until now, and the Lord of hosts shall make for all the peoples a feast of fat things, a feast of wines on the lees, and of well-refined wines. So this is, again, another midrash. You can see this idea. They're very consistent with the usage of these ideas. The great wine, the good wine, is for the Messianic kingdom. Regarding the world to come, the Gemara asks, what is the reward about which it is said, no eye has seen it? The rabbi said, that is the wine that has been preserved in its grapes since the 6 days of creation. Completely different midrash, same idea. So you can see how the 6 stone jars are connecting to this, right? Sorry, losing my voice a little bit. Okay. I think it's this vent. Somewhere there's a vent. There's a building. Okay. 6 stone jars of water. The Torah that we have today, water, right? The wine has waited 6,000 years. It's the joy of the world to come. This connects back to the idea that it's not my time. Does it make sense? It's not my time. It's not my hour yet. But I'll give you a taste of that.
Even at the Passover supper, when he says, I won't drink this again until.
Right. I wonder if it's this wine that is
Beautiful.
talking about.
Yeah, because that's the wine of the Messianic era, which we haven't experienced yet. But it's not my time yet, right? Because we think back to the time on the map, 6 days, 6,000. But we can sample it now. We'll give you a taste of the Messianic kingdom now. It's a very hopeful story if you're reading that and you're wondering if the Messianic era is still ahead, right? Okay, the bridegroom. So who is the bridegroom? Think of who we read earlier. Okay. I will betroth you to me forever. We said that from Hosea. Your maker is your husband. We said that last week. Baal, right? Baalim are the idols. As the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your God rejoice over you. So the bridegroom in the story is only mentioned once, and it's when the master of the ceremony says, wow, you saved the good wine for the end. That's the opposite of how the world typically works. The bridegroom, it represents Hashem, it represents God.
And the Shaliach, the sent one, he can even get married in place of the one who sent him.
Right.
And that's Yeshua's role.
Yeah, and that's a topic I wish we could break open one day. Maybe one day we will. But yeah, so there's someone can be sent to make legal a wedding in Jewish tradition. Now, obviously, it stops at a certain point because that's a problem. But legally, a person can stand next to the other and accept the bride on behalf of the person who, for some reason, can't make it. And then it happened on that date. Even though this person wasn't there, legally it happened on this date. And in this case, the Shaliach, which is who Yeshua and the apostles are saying he is standing in for the actual bridegroom.
That would probably be like Eleazar and Rivka.
For sure.
Yeah.
100% for sure.
He gives gifts, and then he asks, "Will you go with this man?" And that was a formal entreaty, I think, at that time. It wasn't just a statement. You know, it had some kind of heft to it. That he asked the daughter if you'd go with him.
100%.
Money was laid on the table, and she accepted it.
Yeah.
And that is a halakhic framework still available today. It's just unknown outside of the Jewish, usually Orthodox tradition.
I believe something I heard somewhere. Maybe the 2 servants or the 2 people that were waiting while Abraham was offering up to Isaac was Ishmael and Eliezer.
Yeah, when they were going up to. All right, so putting it together. Let's put these pieces back together, and you're going to have to read this on your own time because I think we're at time. But go back through it. It's 12 verses and see what you come up with. The wedding location seems to be hinting at the idea of redemption. I didn't say it, but the word Cana is also connected to the word tikkun, repair, restoration, right? So the wedding, we're told twice, this revelatory, redemptive wedding is what we're looking at. We already know from the first sentence it's a redemption kind of setting and some kind of revelation coming. The wedding picks up, I think, on where the book Hosea leaves off. This bride who's been cast out is redeemed, back with the husband of whom she's betrothed, Israel and God. Right? It's like a midrash off of the book of Hosea. The pure water represents the Torah we have today. And then what do you do with Torah? You teach a new insight, a novel interpretation, a new understanding of that Torah. That is entirely what the Sermon on the Mount is. You've heard it said, but I teach this. You've heard this, I teach that. That is typical, traditional rabbinic chiddush. It's like I'm making new, I'm renewing. But what we're seeing is that Torah we have, the water, is being made to wine.
It's a contrast, but it's and.
Yes.
Also like the rest. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're seeing some kind of redemption is coming. The nation is being taken back. The wedding is about to happen. We're going to get all the things we were promised, right? Joy, the revelation of Torah. I think the 6 stone jars serve as a reference to the Torah that has been waiting for us for this moment to be fully revealed.
I think it's something else very interesting about wine in general, its nature. You could start off with a very young wine. It would be more highly acidic, acerb. The color would be kind of a very bright and splashy kind of color. You let it age, and at each a different interval, like 2, 3, 4. Not only about how much you decant it, how much you breathe it when you open it up. It could be an entirely different wine.
Yeah.
Even though it's the same wine, it can come. It's and not only that, but sugars are kind of like this prima materia that, like when you read on the back of wine bottles, the labels will say it has notes of espresso and tea leaves and all these. Like, they're not putting that in there. It's like you can trick the sugars to do that. In other words, you can have something that's this beginning prime material and get dozens of different things out of it at different times, depending on when you extract it and finally, get it out. And it can take on multiple layers, depending on when you extract it, and not only that, but how long you actually decant or breathe it. And so it's like it's one of those things that can, although it's the same substance, take on a completely different valence depending on when you uncork it, if that makes sense. And so if you uncork it in this age, it's going to have a different shade nuance to it than if you uncork it in this age. It's for all seasons, essentially.
Yeah, it's funny because you just, I don't know why that brought this memory to mind, but there's a lot in the rabbinic tradition, again, about wine and the vessel and the taking care of. And there's this story, this emperor's daughter is giving this rabbi a hard time. He knows everything about the Torah, but she says he's ugly. And he said, she's like, how does so much amazing Torah come from a vessel so ugly? And he said, well, how about look at the way you keep wine. Why do you keep wine in the humble barrels that we keep wine in? You should put all of your wine in beautiful silver, ornate barrels. And the emperor's daughter likes the idea, and she does it. Ruins all of it, turns it all to vinegar, because the vessel's not humble, right? So there's a lesson here. And then, of course, that rabbi gets in trouble with the emperor, because you just ruined the kingdoms. You told her to do it, and you ruined the wine. Why did you do it? And the lesson is about the humility of the vessel that has the wine. But it's this idea that there's this kind of Torah knowledge is hidden in the humble and it's stored away, right?
It just to totally murder a myth. Grape juice doesn't do any of this stuff. Like actual grape juice. Like there's this kind of Southern Baptist myth that everybody in the Bible is running around drinking Welch's in conformity with Adventist norms. But That's not the case. Grape juice doesn't change with time
Yeah.
and take on personalities. So
Yes.
whatever.
Well, good. So we have this idea now. Okay, we're talking about something very ancient that's about to be revealed in the form of a taste of it, right? It's not fully in place. The good wine is the taste of the Torah of the Messianic era.
Wow.
And it's from this point in John, we start to see these ideas revealed. And a lot of these ideas are in the rabbinic tradition. Some of them are connected with much later revelations of rabbinic tradition. Well, revelations to us because it's been translated or kept hidden. But this is what I think we're seeing in this story. I think we're seeing a foreshadowing of the Messianic kingdom and the knowledge that comes with that and the promises of God being rolled out in this story that seems to be tied to the prophets. It's living out what would come from those where the prophets ended. So, in conclusion, the story of the miracle at Cana hints at the idea of redemption. The nations repair its tikkun at its wedding, which is the Messianic kingdom. It's God saying, this is going to happen, right? This is what I promised. Yeshua provides the people with a taste of the Messianic era, with the good wine, the joy, and the revelation of the Torah that's been waiting for everyone, as promised in the Tanakh. And then from that point on, the book of John continues to just reveal and unleash these types of ideas to us.
So like Cana could be also like if we make it redemption or create Cana or establish, it could be like his established or his create, his redemption, and tikkun te would be the prefix for you create, you redeem, and so that would be a tikkun that's personal. That would be a redemption that we are doing.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's okay to read those things in a different way later. I think that what's going on is probably more collective. It becomes more personalized later, I think. But I still think, yeah, go ahead. If that's what you read from it and it fits, it does. I mean, there's no reason we couldn't do that and read it that way.
You know, and I think more popular religion, when you see like on TV, when like Franklin Graham, for example, asks, "Where will you go when you die?" That isn't the question. It seems to be like, what is the future going to be like for the disciples of Jesus? It doesn't seem to be like, it's almost a neurological and almost personal, selfish question. Where will I go when my body gives out? Whereas there's this encompassing vision of like, what will the world one day be? Which is different entirely in so many ways. Because where will you go when you die? It's very almost ego-driven, if that makes sense. I'm worrying about my self-preservation, not I'm trying to build this world and make it, more like it should be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think this is a collective story, and if it is tracking along with the Parsha cycle, it's a collective for everyone to read and benefit from. But it even says, like, in the beginning, Yeshua and his disciples were invited. Well, think of other wedding parables where some people were invited, some didn't make it.
Sure.
Right? There's an idea that it's a collective, it's a party, it's a banquet. Banquets are never individual. It's a collective humanity, Israel in this case, celebration.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Any questions?
So are we seeing potentially as a collective if Israel would have practiced tikkun, would have repented and brought that repairing
That's
to
certainly...
would Yeshua, where I'm going with this, potentially have us ushered in the Messianic era then?
That's a debate for sure. I'm in the camp that there was a lot more work to be done. It was the beginning of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but then also that you have the demons, so to speak. Not that that's a great testimony, but what are you doing here already? You're not supposed to be here yet.
Because it wasn't his time.
Yeah, it wasn't the time. I think that there was a belief in the first century that the Messianic era was very close to being brought in, and some say we could have done it. I still think you had the rest of the world to bring on board, and it's taken how long, and we're not quite there yet. I think it could have been quicker, but I don't I still think that it, like, yes, we could hasten any moment, but there is definitely the 6,000 year idea, the divine day, and it seems like it's going to take the whole day to get the world on board.
My thought on that was like during the Messianic era, where you have all the Jews doing, what the chosen people, what they were supposed to be doing, then the Gentiles would have had more of a chance, I think, of coming into the fold during that 1,000 year reign, maybe potentially, because
potentially.
the Yetzer Hara is subdued, and we see that there is going to be that taking place, where there will be people having to come to know the Lord and stuff during
Sure.
that time. So I don't know.
No, it's a long game, and some of it's a mystery, right? We are still waiting for that to.
Right.
I suspect it'll be not exactly when he says that coming time when you don't think. So it'll be maybe around it, but it won't be exactly that.
Yeah, the Jewish tradition says that when the Messiah comes, not much will change immediately. There's going to be a process of getting things in order. You can imagine it's not going to be overnight. Some countries are still going to fight it. Some people are going to fight it. Right, Anthony?
Yeah, just a thought. It's not something to, I guess, to debate or to talk about. The number 3 and the number 6 in these parables, how that they might reflect the offerings at the temple. The 3rd hour, Yeshua's put on an execution state at the 3rd hour. He comes off at the 9th hour. The 6th hour would have been represented here with the wine, with the things. Just something to think about. What would be going on at the temple that might reflect that in our prayer times of connecting to Hashem.
Yeah, maybe around the time of Passover, we'll break some of these relevant ones out. David.
Yeah, when you mentioned about the wedding, I immediately thought of Shabbat. Because when you light the candles on Friday night, you're bringing in the bride, which is Shabbat.
Yeah. So the Messianic kingdom is a Shabbat is a shadow of the Messianic kingdom. Yeah. We'll go, one more.
Isn't a subtle commentary on who's the one that was supposed to be responsible for the wine, the master, the leadership, who, it's like, well, where did this wine come from? It's almost like sort of a little hint at maybe the priesthood or the Levites aren't doing their job of disseminating the Torah in the right way.
I don't know. I think this story is an all positive. It's a net positive. I mean, from start to finish, it's not just net positive. It's a positive retelling. I don't see any real indictments going on. It comes later.
Real indictment. I just mean it's like the one that was supposed to be responsible for the wine didn't know where this new wine was coming from.
Could be. Yeah, and I honestly don't know who that person would be. I'd have to really dig in and see, does this person exist in other stories? That's usually the hard part, is finding the other stories that have that. John, I'm telling you, John is one of those where there are some things I don't think we can reconstruct. I think we're looking at...
There's so much, I think we talked about this in Torah for a couple of weeks ago, too. There's so much about what will happen that it's hidden. And it'll be revealed, like you said with the Lakot, it'll be revealed at the right time.
Yeah.
And we was it Rosh Hashanah? I went through a glass thin light.
Yeah.
But and later I'll be able to see in the full light.
Yep.
And that's I think that's the case for all of them. It's the case for him. It's surely the case for everybody else. Probably.
Yeah, so he's saying that there's just there's a lot that we don't see clearly. And I think that there's a whole world of midrashic traditions that never got written and translated that we just don't have access to, which might make sense in some of these. But at the end of the day, to me, this fits 100% the rabbinic pattern of midrash.
Many things were allowed to not make it because God wasn't ready for the greater world to know. I heard a rabbi talking this week. Most of the writings of the Rambam were destroyed because the church took them. And because somebody had falsely declared him a heretic, they took it and burned most of the writings. So even a lot of we don't have everything from the sages, from one of the greatest sages. And so I think it's a tragedy. Yet maybe there's a purpose.
Yeah, there's some divine providence there.
Yeah.
Well, good.